welcome in to kick off the tip off with Noah and Gage here, coming at you with some NFL offseason takes. Really interesting part of the year. Obviously, Super Bowl just happened. Getting into a little bit more of where maybe the GM world lives. What do you got to say here, Gage?
Yeah, so this season moves along quickly, man. Super Bowl obviously just happens, and now here we are gearing up for draft coming in April, and teams are already making moves. A lot of headlines already with some star players, and that's what makes the NFL so great. There's always something to talk about. There's always stuff going on. So we're just gonna dive into a couple key guys who have been in the news lately, give some predictions, kind of our thoughts where we see them going, and just as we do best, just talk some football, man, for sure. And
Yeah.
and before we get going, I'll ask this question to you. Probably about 20 minutes or so, I was watching some of the Four Nations, the hockey square off where they got USA and Canada, Finland, and Sweden, and all them, and they were like, I was reminded why hockey is like a great sport. Within the first like 9 seconds of the game, there were three fist fights. And obviously, hockey, I mean, you just drop the gloves and start
For
swinging.
the
So
country.
for the country, before we even get into any football stuff, if the NFL were to adapt that rule for starting next year, is there one fight that you would want to see, like two NFL guys just take the helmets off and just go at it? You got one in mind?
Obviously, I think I'm ready for round two. Miles Garrett versus Mason Rudolph. I mean, I like
That
that matchup. The helmet involved on the first time, just interesting.
that one came, yeah, that one definitely came to my mind. I don't know, man. I was thinking some big bodies like Jalen Carter versus maybe an offensive lineman somewhere. I don't know. You would for sure see some knockouts if that
Yeah,
was the case in the
yeah.
NFL. So
Helmets involved, everything. There would definitely be.
yeah, yeah. Keep the props. I mean, it could look like WWE people swinging the helmets as Miles Garrett already did. Taking cleats off and hitting each other in the head. Just whatever, man. But yeah, the fun's out the way. Let's hop right into the to things. Like we mentioned, Super Bowl done. We're already hopping into the offseason talk. So, no, a couple key quarterbacks on the move here. Let's get into Aaron Rodgers here first off. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, him and the Jets splitting up. That trade just simply didn't work out for the Jets.
Yeah, it's hard to say. There's multiple reasons we could think of why it didn't work out. I think maybe if earlier in the not season but his tenure in New York, maybe if he's paired with Devontae Adams, someone who's a proven wide receiver. Not that Garrett Wilson's bad in any way. Garrett Wilson's a phenomenal receiver, but just chemistry. It seemed like he missed chemistry with his receivers, even though he had Lazard there a little bit with him in previous year. Who was the guy he's always played with? Can't think
Randall
of
Cobb.
Randall Cobb. He had Randall Cobb there. Obviously, with the Achilles injury, not much he can do there. Comes back and just was not typical Aaron Rodgers. But was that Aaron Rodgers' fault? If you're a GM in the league right now, Gage, do you look at him and say, "I'm not, I'm not in love with this guy," or is this everything you want to maybe not rebuild a franchise because of age, but to solidify what you want your franchise to be?
It's crazy to me that I'm about to talk positively about Aaron Rodgers because you're looking at somebody who bet on the Jet spread probably every single week of the regular season this past year. Probably the most talented team to ever be under 500. Aaron Rodgers, Brees Hall, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Sauce. I was just they had me trapped every week. But so you've said down here, as well as a lot of media, Aaron Rodgers responded to that saying his down years are career years for some. And I really got to thinking about that now, right? Just a team in division, right? Josh Allen finishes this year with MVP. Obviously, phenomenal rushing numbers from him. But let's look strictly at passing. Josh Allen finishes with 3,731 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Aaron Rodgers in a down year is eighth in the NFL this past year in passing yards, 3,897, tied for seventh with 28 passing touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So he technically is right. Down year for him is a career year and MVP for others outside of the rushing number that Allen had and obviously team success.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the thing was, I mean, you could definitely say that statistics might have been skewed a little bit because of the Jets consistently, they're consistently down in games. But that's another situation where we're looking at what Jamar Chase did, where people are like, oh, the Bengals were always down. They were consistently throwing the ball. He had more targets than a lot of guys, this and that, blah,
It's
blah, blah.
not his fault.
It's not his fault. He's put in a position where he's got to throw it. And I think that's where you saw maybe a little bit of a rise in Aaron Rodgers' interception numbers, is because, like, okay, I've got to make something happen here. I need to force the ball down the field here. And you're seeing a lot of situations where maybe he's trying to hit someone up the seam. The safety knows it, undercuts the seam route. Or maybe chances that we wouldn't have saw him take in Green Bay, now that we saw him take it in New York because of the situation he was in. I've always been a fan of Aaron Rodgers, and he's definitely out there on, just watching the documentary on Netflix of him. Very interesting character, but I still think he's a very, at the least, a serviceable quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, a lot of teams would take him in a heartbeat, whether they want to admit that or not. And he's out there for sure, man. A lot of mixed opinions about him, but I personally, I think he's just really misunderstood. And these guys who are like this, when they're thrown into the national media, I think he eventually got to a point of age where he was so far along in his career, he just stopped caring what other people thought. I don't think he ever really cared to begin with, but he's, in my opinion, I think he still got it. It's obviously not what it used to be at that MVP level, but he is still able to lead the right team to the playoffs. I really do believe that. And so, a prediction, for a team that comes to my mind immediately, Noah, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are letting Russell Wilson and Justin Fields walk right out of the door. You saw it come down to the playoff time when they played Baltimore. Arthur Smith he didn't seem to like Russell Wilson at quarterback. It seemed like he opted for Justin Fields. And, Tomlin kind of had some say in that. So this is a team I look at in terms of being a quarterback away. You're coming off a wild card appearance where you got beat by the Baltimore Ravens. You're in desperate need of consistent quarterback play. Russell Wilson played good there for a while, but when the wheels fell off, it just went downhill very quickly.
Yeah,
I think Aaron Rodgers brings a sense of consistency that Russell Wilson doesn't.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about the addition of Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh is he had two of what would say, pretty mobile quarterbacks behind that offensive line. And I think that's why the Steelers were more successful with Justin Fields behind the quarterback. Justin Fields wasn't able to make the throws I saw Russell Wilson make throughout the year. It seemed like Russell Wilson just has a touch on the ball, on go balls on the sidelines. And 50-50, I think he always gives his guy a shot at the football, right? So I think Fields was a little bit more successful in Pittsburgh and led them to, not going to say obviously Russell Wilson gave the Steelers a good season, and I wouldn't say a good shot in the playoffs because they end up with Baltimore first round. But just looking at the situation, Fields seemed to be more impactful because of the mobility. The thing that worries me in Pittsburgh is a young offensive line, right? You're almost putting him into the same situation that we saw went wrong in New York, right? We're putting him behind an offensive line that isn't proven, even though me and you, we love Frazier. Phenomenal center. But just looking all around, will they be able to protect Aaron Rodgers? And if they aren't able to protect Aaron Rodgers, he's proven that he doesn't have the mobility he once had in the league.
Yeah, and they've been investing heavily into that offensive line. In 2023, they spent their 14th pick on Broderick Jones, right tackle out of Georgia. And then this past year, Troy Fatuana from Washington, I believe they picked him in the mid-20s. Pull this up just so I'm right about that. Actually picked 20 on the dot in this past year's draft. Zach Frazier, who we mentioned. So they've been actively investing in trying to get this offensive line correct. Fatuana had an injury, didn't really play a lot this past year, so it'd be interesting to see him get back into the mix of things. But if they can hold up and give protection to a guy like Aaron Rodgers walking into this offense, it's to me, who else can keep tabs and keep Aaron Rodgers out of the media for negative things better than Mike Tomlin. You're looking at a guy who dealt with Antonio Brown, who's the king of CTE, and is posting some of the most outrageous stuff I've ever saw in my life on Twitter. Le'Veon Bell, who probably 2 months after being done in the NFL actively comes out and said he played 98% of his teams high. It just seems like Mike Tomlin has a way of keeping these guys intact. And then Arthur Smith, they'll retain as offensive coordinator. I'm not a huge fan of. He seemed to take a much better step as an offensive coordinator outside of a head coach this past year in Pittsburgh. But those two guys, I think if Aaron Rodgers can come in, let them be the step above, let them coach, him play quarterback. You're walking into a situation where you have Jaylen Warren. They're probably going to be looking at drafting a running back in this upcoming draft class and a loaded class, so they should have no problem with that. George Pickens, who similar enough, Noah, I think he kind of has some Garrett Wilson traits to him. Young, athletic, huge catch radius, can go make the play. And then I'm going to add something in here too. This is a perfect spot for Davante Adams to follow Aaron Rodgers and step in as the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 if they want to kick Pickens down. Pittsburgh's wide receiver 2 right now, Van Jefferson, followed up by Mike Williams, who I'm sure if Rodgers does come in, he'll be out. And then Roman Wilson, who they drafted this past year in the 3rd round, I believe. So this is also a perfect spot for Davante Adams to just piggyback right with Aaron Rodgers and step in and play at the bottom end of their careers.
Yeah, I think if Davante Adams were to follow Aaron Rodgers, and we all know that he does enjoy playing with Aaron Rodgers, that does definitely give an addition to the Steelers' offensive scheme and what they're able to do offensively. They might not have to. The Steelers fans might not have to watch them line up on 2nd and 12 and think, "Shit, Najee's getting the ball." Right? Mm-hmm. I think that does give the addition or open up things offensively for them. I think it would help George Pickens being around Davante Adams as well. As far as Aaron Rodgers, as far as his offensive line will take him, I watched him throw the football at the Jets a lot this year, and it's like some of the throws he's making, 75% of the quarterbacks in the NFL cannot make.
Like, he has Hall of Fame touch on his throws. The talent is undeniable. There for a long time, the argument was, I think it was before Mahomes really entered and solidified himself in this league. The argument was, well, yeah, Brady has the accolades and this and that, but what Aaron Rodgers was doing in Green Bay was eye-catching without even really having a ton of playoff success. They won a Super Bowl and then lost a couple of heartbreaking games. The loss to the Arizona Cardinals comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think 100% there's definitely talks of Aaron Rodgers and what he's been able to do in the NFL. As far as Green Bay, did the Green Bay miss out on 3 Super Bowls possibly because they weren't willing to spend cap and surround Aaron Rodgers with additional talent? Yeah, probably.
And invest draft capital on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously when you have a good defense, at least a solid defense, and Aaron Rodgers is playing with you, you're going to be in a lot of games because offensively he's not going to make a ton of mistakes. But what I look at with the Steelers is defenses. They spent very heavy on the defense this past year. Defense in games where you thought maybe they could help, it didn't seem they appeared to come to play. So do you see them try and stretch it? If I'm a Steelers fan, I wouldn't. I can't look at looking at adding Aaron Rodgers and say, man, this is awful. But I don't know if I look at it and I'm like, oh shit, we've got Aaron Rodgers, right? Because of the offensive line play. And Arthur Smith, he's not my favorite OC.
Yeah, it'd definitely be an interesting fit. But let's hear your take on this, man. This would be my first time hearing this, so I'm excited.
So I see Aaron Rodgers, and from what I said with the offensive line at the Steelers, this would kind of be an issue where I could see him going. But we all know the draft class this year, quarterback, you have 2 that kind of stand out, and then outside of that, and the 2 that are standing out, do you think they're ready to start in the NFL right now? I don't know. You would have to see a lot out of those guys. There's a team that has the ability to draft a quarterback and let them set for maybe it's half a season, maybe it's a full year, and that's the Oakland Raiders, right?
Mm.
Or Las Vegas Raiders.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas Raiders.
Stuck in nostalgic. All
yeah,
right, Las Vegas. Pete
yeah.
Carroll.
So
Go ahead. This is you. Go ahead. I like this.
I like the Pete Carroll with Aaron Rodgers. I like that matchup.
Before you get going, they're picking 7, Noah. So they're really out there. They're in no range to get Cam Ward or Shedeur. So this does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So just looking at where they're able to draft. Say Cam Ward falls to him or Shedeur falls to him. Their GM right now doesn't think that either of those guys are there, right? So they're playing up to the draft and they're like, man, they're probably talking to other GMs, that are picking above them saying, what do you think happens? Are you taking quarterback? Are you taking quarterback? Where are you going? So if two of these teams come and say, hey, we're going to take quarterback and we're going to take quarterback, even if they were to catch a gift with a quarterback coming to them at the 7th pick, you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a guy like Shedeur, or you have Cam Ward, who seem both to, like I said, maybe not definitely ready to play in the NFL, but there's going to be a little bit of a bridge or a gap there for them, both as quarterbacks. What other guy? I mean, look at Jordan Love. I'm not sold on Jordan Love, but Jordan Love's a solid quarterback. He's serviceable in the NFL, right? He's proven that. He's taken the
and an above-average playmaker.
Exactly. So you put Aaron Rodgers in front of Shedeur or Cam if they were to get a quarterback. Okay, beautiful. They set under him 1 year. Aaron Rodgers probably got 1 year left. This is probably his last go-around, in my opinion. If not, he's got one and hopefully don't get injured and might be able to play through another. But I just see Las Vegas being a perfect spot for him. They've got Brock Bowers. They've got, number 7, if they don't get that quarterback, they've got their choice. Offensive line, defensive, they got running back, whatever they want, right? Or they go
Ted McMillan if he's on the board,
if he falls.
Arizona.
So
Jacoby Myers.
I mean, like I said, Brock Bowers, best rookie receiving in history, best rookie receiver in history, tight end or wide receiver. So just looking into this, I think there's so much that could happen here. And additionally, you bring in Pete Carroll, who is a culture builder, right? Like, he is a culture builder. You put Aaron Rodgers in front of that and say, all right, let's go get wins. Let's sneak into the playoffs. I think it could happen.
You and I talked about this. The Pete Carroll hire was a hire of, hey, we're going to take a step in the right direction. We're not going to fool around with some of these guys who have the name value or the up-and-coming offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator attached to their name for the head coaching spot. We're going to get a guy that's proven he can win games at the NFL level. John Spytek is their new general manager, former assistant for the Buccaneers, and that was kind of his thought process. I think we're going to get a step in the right direction. And Pete Carroll, one of the best left out of that entire hiring cycle. And yeah, I can't see this happening. Obviously, Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, just not a serviceable QB1 in this league. So a team that's in need of a quarterback, along with, they really need to start being productive if they want to keep Max Crosby around.
Yeah, and I think that's the situation where I'm looking at is like, your defense hasn't been awful. Can their defense improve? Yes. Can every defense in the NFL outside of the Eagles improve? Yes, right? So just looking at the situation, you're like, okay, we get a solid quarterback in here. Like I said, it's not going to be breaking with athleticism. He's not going to, go out there and single-handedly win you a Super Bowl, right? But you have consistency at that position with Aaron Rodgers, and that's what the Raiders, I mean, if Pierce would have had Aaron Rodgers, are we having the conversation with Pete Carroll being in Oakland or Las Vegas? Sorry, keep on saying that. But another thing to point out here is Aaron Rodgers is a West Coast boy, right? Like, he
California.
likes the West Coast. Seeing him throw the football in warm weather would be beauty, right? He's been in Las Vegas. He's been in Green Bay. I love the situation. I love where that puts the Raiders, whether they draft a quarterback or if they decide to wait. I think that also gives them, if they would get Aaron Rodgers, if you get a guy like Jackson Dart in later rounds, or you pick up one of the guys that don't exactly have the name that Shedeur or Cam Ward have, it lets them set, and you can see what you have in that pick.
I like that for sure. And you're also talking about a quarterback who'll be able to compete in that division. Bo Nix, sneaky rookie season this past year that nobody really talked about. Mahomes, obviously, and then Justin Herbert. You have to have a quarterback to compete in that AFC West division. So I do like that. And speaking of California, Noah, another team I'll throw out here before we move on to the next player. If things go south with Brock Purdy and the 49ers in terms of contract negotiation, I think the 49ers could be a team where, hey, we're going to give Aaron a 1-year chance here because our Super Bowl window is open and we know that he could get us there.
Oh yeah, if that were to happen, and I already have the 49ers in my Super Bowl next year, but if that were to happen, I actually raise and I'm saying, yeah, that's a Super Bowl contending team. Not that Brock Purdy's bad, but his ability, right? Aaron Rodgers' ability to know where he's going with the football before the football snapped. And additionally, you have a back like McCaffrey. If they decide to keep him, I think they will. But they keep McCaffrey. You've got Ayuk recovering from the ACL, so when he gets back, Juwan Jennings, I don't believe he's a free agent. I believe they signed him back. So you've got a lot of there. And then George Kittle. So a lot of weapons around him. He doesn't have to be a superstar. And all he has to do, make the right read. And you're not going to be down in a lot of games because of the defense.
And of course, paired with Kyle Shanahan. So that'll be something to monitor. Obviously, I think Brock Purdy's asking somewhere in the range of $250 million. So it's a high number. We'll see what Lynch there decides.
I didn't know that was the number that they've pitched. And man, if you're a 49ers fan, you have to be sick, right? You didn't get the Super Bowl in his rookie contract, and now you're looking at someone who hasn't won one with all that talent around him. Probably a discussion for another day, Gage, so don't want to get into it too much, but Aaron Rodgers sounds really good, really, really good for what he would be willing to play for.
It'd definitely be an option to pivot to, and I think if that is the case, you'll see Aaron Rodgers kind of prolong this free agency period to really see what doors open up. But one more quarterback that's been in the headlines for early offseason NFL news, Noah, Sam Darnold, and potentially played himself out of some big money here down the stretch of the season, and along with that wild card game versus the Rams.
Yeah, Sam Darnold looked phenomenal at the beginning of the year, and it looked like maybe teams caught up to him. They realized what he liked, what he didn't like, where to bring pressure from, what gets him unsure in the pocket. The Rams seemed like they exploited every weakness he had. Not exactly sure if he wasn't playing for the Rams that day, honestly, because my God, he did not look good. Even in the Lions game at the season where they shit the bed, definitely lost himself some money in those two games there. Darnold is an interesting piece because I'm a big fan of O'Connell. I know we kind of have differing opinions on that. Not that you don't like O'Connell, but I think I'm higher on O'Connell than you are, right? It's going to take a certain situation for Sam Darnold. He's not going to go into a lot of places. He's not going to be able to win on himself, by himself. He's going to have some talent around him, and it's going to have to be the right fit for him schematically. I think Sam Darnold still won a contract this past year. I think it'd be stupid for a team not to take a shot at him. Gage, where do you... there's so many places I could think in my head, but I start to talk myself out of them. Where do you think he'd go?
So this is actually where I link the New York Giants. I think he stays in the state. Well, not in the state, obviously. The Giants being in New Jersey, being called New York. But like you mentioned, he had success with O'Connell. Is a lot of his success due to Kevin O'Connell? Who knows? But going from KOC to Brian Dable, who resurrected Josh Allen and propelled him into what he is today, could be a great situation here for Darnold. We talked about the bridge spot. Giants probably obviously going to be in the quarterback market there at 3 if that's Shedeur. You've seen it time and time again, especially recently with Anthony Richardson. Throwing these guys into the fire sometimes isn't just the best thing to do. So I look at a team like the Giants who have Malik Neighbors. They have Wan'Dale Robinson. Slayton, who's a free agent that they might bring back. There's pieces around that offense. Tyrone Tracy at running back. There's pieces in that offense that he could definitely work with. And then obviously having Brian Dable in your ear as well. Could not at the same level as Kevin O'Connell, but somewhere in that range. So I actually kind of like the Giants for him.
I don't mind that Giants take there. The only thing I would say with going with the Giants, I've heard a little bit of rumors here with the Rams and Stafford and the Giants, and that's been stirring my head a little bit. I'm like, man, if Stafford went to the Giants, where does that leave the Rams, and what does it leave in the draft? Because do you still go Cam Ward or Shedeur at 3? Yeah, I think you still have to, because Stafford isn't going to be for 5 or 6 years. Obviously, he's probably got 3-year time.
If Stafford If Stafford were to go to the Giants, it's definitely a conversation by itself because you can use that number 3 overall pick on a Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter if he were to fall.
Yeah.
And if you have Stafford at your quarterback, outside of, Drew Lock and the running back or the quarterbacks that they ran out this past year, that roster isn't bad. I mean, it isn't great, but it's not bad. There's some playmakers on that defensive line: Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, is Dexter Lawrence, the defensive tackle. They have some pieces on that defense, and the Cowboys, who knows what they look like with Schottenheimer? Eagles are always going to be good, and then up and coming Commanders probably due for a little bit of regression, in my opinion. But Stafford makes them interesting for sure.
Yeah, and I think with Sam Darnold, where I would see him fitting, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see from what Pat McAfee linked on Twitter, reading his stuff. I would love for Darnold to get into the Indianapolis Colts system. I think for one, it challenges AR. I don't think AR is a starting quarterback in the NFL right now. I think he's a running back that's playing quarterback right now. I don't think he reads the field. I think he has a strong arm and he launches that thing, right? He does. I don't think there's anyone
has obvious arm talent, but yeah, as far as progressions and seeing and reading the field, he's just nowhere near NFL caliber. Agreed. And as Pat McAfee went on a big rant about, he's not a proven winner. That game where he's coming off the field tapping his helmet due to fatigue or something, and it's third down, and they got to bring Flacco, who was who knows, probably applying for a retirement fund or something at age 46, had to come in the game on a third down.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what Sam Darnold would bring to them is, for one, there's competition there that will elevate what AR has to do to be considered a starting quarterback. And two, I just think you would get consistency, right? You would know what you were going to get at the quarterback position. You wouldn't have to be relying on Joe Flacco to go out there and Flacco, right? Am I right? Flacco.
Who at his age, nothing against him, because he was balling out.
Exactly.
He had Josh Downs, a top 15 fantasy PPR wide receiver this
in my opinion, if I'm with the Colts, right? Like if I'm the Colts head coach, I'm Flacco all season, right? There's no question in my mind. I know you're trying to bring up and coming talent, but that little
in that division,
yes, that little division there, that is an awful division. No offense to C.J. Stroud and the Jags, but I mean that is a toss up. Like that is a throw a ball up in the air. Somebody's got to win that game. I think he would definitely be someone you would consider to say, yeah, he instantly makes you better. Sam Darnold could win that. He's not going to win it by himself, but you have JT, you have Downs, you have Pierce, you have Pittman. Like, you have pieces there. If they would go ahead and get Tyler Warren in this draft, oh my God. I mean, that offense is for real.
And then don't think of Shane Steichen being a slouch. He was the one that worked with Jalen Hurts, and similar to Dable, kind of got him going in the right direction as well. So I like that Colts take as well. We had such a great take on Sam Darnold with the Colts and Giants. I mean, we had dogs barking, we had laptops dying. I mean, just stuff's on fire, man. But yeah, just finishing up with Sam Darnold, right? I think the thing you have to keep in mind with the teams we mentioned, it fits the way his season ended. Because let's play a hypothetical game where he beats the Lions, they get the 1 seed. They win a game in the playoffs. He's looking at major starting quarterback money, and I'm sure the Vikings would make the easy decision of bringing him back at that point. But the way that his season went down the stretch, it opens up this window for some bridge teams or quarterback needy teams where a 2-3 year, $35-45 million deal is in play.
Yeah, agreed with that. And this is a situation where you're looking at, if he were to win those games and maybe he wins one playoff game there, you have a team that is going through quarterback controversy and signing Brock Purdy, like we just spoke about, where you're thinking the 49ers, he's been there for one stint as the backup, correct? So he knows the scheme, he knows the system. You have a lot of talent around him. It puts him in contention for not teams that are really seeking quarterback play like the Giants or the Jets will be, and pushes him into a conversation where a team who's a fringe playoff team is like, okay, let's take a swing. He could get us over the hump.
For sure, man. you know, early season quarterback rumors. Those are kind of the two names in the mix a ton. So let's hop into some